Turning Point USA strikes back at Candace. Interesting story. That's something we haven't really covered very much, but we're going to look into it because things are starting to take a turn for the weird. The possible new motive for the shooter in D.C. Very scary news. We'll talk about that. And coming up this morning, no more income tax? It's a possibility. Can you imagine? Welcome to the Jay Sheldon Show. We are live on Rumble and X. Good morning to you. Thanks for popping by. We appreciate you being here. And it is a Thursday, kind of that nothing day before we head into Friday, and the weekend will be here before you know it. So, yeah, welcome to the Jay Sheldon Show. It's all about sanity, hopefully. We got a lot going on. And right off the bat, though, we're going to tell you about the good folks who make the fuel that keeps us going. And it's in this cup. And I'm going to sip it. Oh, man. That noise is for the sake of our podcast listeners. Yeah, we are a pod. The audio part of this show is out there on Spotify, Apple iTunes, all the different podcast platforms. You can check it out. Anyway, here's a good idea. Don't give your money to woke companies who support the left. Blackout Coffee. Check them out at the link in our show notes and use that coupon code J20 for 20% off your first order. Now, Blackout Coffee, I'm going to sneeze. Sorry, Blackout. Blackout Coffee only uses premium beans. They are always working with local co-ops and American farmers to grow the best beans in the perfect soil under the best conditions. They pick only the top premium beans, and they don't roast them until you order. That's how you know what you're getting is fresh. If you don't order the beans because you have no way to grind them, no problemo, mi amigo. They now offer some of their most popular roasts in ground. Yes, you can get ground beans in a bag delivered right to your doorstep. They've got all kinds of great flavors, which make fantastic holiday gifts, by the way. They're not terribly expensive, $15, $16 a bag, something like that. That's a cheap holiday gift, but it will mean a lot to the coffee lovers in your life. Check them out. Use the link in our show notes, please. That's so we get credit for your visit. And don't forget that great coupon code of J20, Jay20, which will get you 20% off your first order. So again, even if you're reordering, they've got pods, they have instant, they have cold brew, and of course, all their great roasts. Use the link even if you're doing a reorder, because that way, again, we get the credit for your visit. Ditch the other guys and head over to Blackout Coffee with that link in our show notes. Thank you so much, Blackout. John Santos and the gang over there. Fantastic group of people. We love them to bits. Okay. Danny says, good morning. Ooh, I can't wait for the Candace and Turning Point video. I want to hear what Turning Point has to say because Candace has those receipts. And Marilyn, much love back to you. Indeed, she does. I'll tell you what. I run hot and cold on Candace Owens. There's sometimes I do watch her podcast, and there are times when I sit there and I listen and I think, my God, woman, you have lost your mind. And then she just keeps coming up with the receipts. She makes some outrageous accusations, and yet she's got the receipts for it. It's frightening. She has actually allegedly had a death threat against her life. That is some scary stuff. Well, the producer of the Charlie Kirk Show, Blake Neff, has called out Candace Owens for this, what he calls a reckless disregard for the truth and evil lies he said she's made about the assassination of the late co-founder of Turning Point USA, Charlie Kirk. In a post and a video they shared on X, Neff made it very clear the gauntlet has been thrown down against Owens and a lot of accusations and lies, he says, about things like how Kurt's friends and his organization allegedly knew and approved of his murder. A lot of other claims going out there. Again, quoting Neff, for the past 3 months, we've received a flood of questions about Candace Owen and her claims attacking Charlie's closest friends. For 3 months, we preferred to remain silent, but the attacks have not stopped. So today, he wrote, I deliver this response, and here is that response.
We wanted to use this segment at the top of this hour to say something important, something very important. For the past 2.5 months, there is a topic that has flooded our Freedom inbox. It has been nonstop on social media, but which we have almost totally avoided on this show. You probably already know what I'm talking about, which shows just how ubiquitous it has been. Ever since Charlie's murder, Candace Owens has leveled a flood of allegations against people at Turning Point USA, people at Turning Point Action, and people who work for this show. She has made them against some of Charlie's closest friends and against some of his most dedicated employees. She has suggested that Michael McCoy, Charlie's chief of staff, knew Charlie would be murdered, was happy that he died, and stayed silent because he was told he would be the next Charlie. She has suggested Michael is not his real name. It is. I have seen his birth certificate myself. She has called it suspicious that Mikey's wife, who works at Turning Point, helped plan the campus tour event where Charlie was murdered, which she didn't, by the way. She doesn't work on campus events. Candace has suggested the Utah Valley University event was unusual and its details suggested a, quote, inside job. She has claimed that foreign aircraft have followed Erica Kirk around the country and that Turning Point has lied about this happening. She has accused us of lying about Charlie wanting Erica to take over for him if he died. She has suggested Charlie's security team intentionally denied him first aid after the shooting to ensure that he died. She has raised suspicions about the head of our technical team because he took an SD card out of a camera. She has spread absurd claims that Tyler Boyer, who we just had on the show, sexually abuses male interns. She has suggested that TPUSA faith-affiliated pastors, like theologian Frank Turek, who we'll have on in a moment, and Pastor Rob McCoy, are part of a military, quote, infiltration of Turning Point, either because they are veterans or because they have family members who are. Even if not everyone has been named specifically, though, Candace has effectively tarred everyone here with complicity in Charlie's death by repeatedly saying he was, quote, betrayed by, quote, everyone. She has said Charlie's murder, quote, had to be approved by Charlie's friends, and then suggested those friends might have her murdered too for, quote, knowing the truth. She has made claims of financial impropriety and fraud at Turning Point, adding up into the millions of dollars, which, again, is not true. Charlie made sure the organization was audited by a third party every year. He personally reviewed and he signed off on every expense report, and literally every single bill paid by the organization down to a single United States dollar. We have never missed a 990 deadline. Candace has made other stranger allegations involving French paratroopers in maroon shirts, Egyptian Air Force planes flying out of Provo, Utah, and potential underground assassins traveling through unseen tunnels. At one point in early November, she started wildly throwing suspicion on members of Utah Valley's soccer team for wearing hoodies. I could go on. There is always something new coming up, and none of it ever pans out because, from the start, there has been nothing there. The attacks and allegations from Candace are either lies or they are innuendos thrown around with a total, reckless disregard for the truth so that Candace can manipulate and string along an audience of people who don't realize they are being played. Instead of being able to grieve properly after one of the most heinous murders in American history, a murder many of us had to witness, my friends have had to endure harassment from people who have gotten whipped up by what Candace is saying. In fact, I would say we have suffered more harassment from these people than we have from Antifa supporters who overtly celebrate Charlie's murder. And just like a lot of those Antifa members, many of these people take this delight in how gross and unpleasant they can be. What our friends have had to endure is not funny, and it's not insignificant. It is evil. I have seen it. For months, we have received hundreds, thousands, I suspect, emails and calls asking us to respond. People have wanted us to invite Candace on the show. But for a long time, our approach was to say nothing. We did that for several reasons. First, we thought that her prevarications were so absurd that nobody would believe them. We shouldn't have to answer questions about secret tunnels or Egyptian Air Force planes. That sort of thing is just, it's beneath contempt to respond to. The second reason we've said so little, though, is because there's a good rule of thumb, which Charlie followed. Do not feed the trolls. Focus on the mission, reviving America, uplifting young people, making heaven crowded. Don't give air to people who want to tear you down and sow discord. Lastly, we didn't respond because Charlie always viewed Candace as a friend, and we were holding out hope that she would return that friendship and stop what she was doing. But a week from now, it's going to be 3 months since Charlie's murder. Candace has not changed her behavior. She has continued to spread falsehoods about Charlie's friends, and she continues to concoct new ones about new people. She's using these falsehoods to enrich herself while dividing the conservative movement at an absolutely critical time for this country. And far too often, we here have heard from ordinary people, people who loved Charlie and who Charlie loved so much in return. These people have expressed the worry that we are staying silent out of cowardice or as some sort of tacit admission that some of the attacks are true. Neither is the case. Our silence has never been, and it will never be, equal to complacency or approval. Still, we decided Charlie would not allow this to go on. Charlie was not a coward. Charlie was a fighter. Charlie would not allow someone to spread lies about the people closest to him with impunity. And he would feel ashamed if other people were stepping up to defend his friends while he never did so himself. Candace has mentioned several times that the ball is in our court. So here's what is going to happen. In the near future, there will be a live stream here in Phoenix where we address in a clear and comprehensive way the claims and accusations, the false accusations that have been made against Charlie's family, friends, and the people here at Turning Point. We plan to walk through everything carefully and thoroughly. If Candace is available, we would sincerely welcome her participation in that live stream at our studio here in Phoenix. At this point, we believe the ball is back in her court. Our motivation for doing this is not out of any obligation to Candace. It is about honoring Charlie. We feel a deep responsibility to protect his legacy, his work, and the truth. I feel that. I owe Charlie everything in my life. I feel it immensely. And that is why we feel compelled to speak clearly and openly now. We'll have more on this in the near future. We wanted to use this segment.
And normally, I would never, ever play a cut that long. It's over 7 minutes long. But I'm telling you, in this case, it's worth your time to hear exactly what they have to say. You believe it? Do you buy it? I don't know. She does indeed have the receipts for a lot of her accusations, if not all. She suggested the Utah Valley University event was unusual. It certainly seems to be. But there you go. That's the response. Pretty unbelievable. This basically, the bottom line is this needs to stop one way or the other. And you're right, Danny, I don't see a divided conservative body out there at all. Everybody she knows says wanted to or talked to has wanted answers and said nothing adds up. Excuse me. You know, that really is the bottom line, is that when you look at the whole thing overall, forget the details, and there's a lot of them that are weird, it just, that's the perfect phrase, it doesn't add up. So, we'll see. This may do the trick. Charlie's murder has been painful for absolutely everybody connected with the conservative movement, the faith movement, which Charlie was, of course, leading. But it doesn't, you're right, it doesn't add up. That is the headline. And so we'll see. And like he said, that event is coming up. We'll pay close attention and see what happens with that. We'll cover it when it does. It's uh, it's a nightmare, an absolute nightmare. But at least the conversation is going on. At least someone is saying something. Candace has been having free reign to just come out there and say what she will. Like I said, very often she's got the receipts for the things she claims. And now finally Turning Point has come back and it kind of answered. Honestly, I didn't hear a whole lot of answers. He did go through a grocery list of the things she has claimed, but as far as his countering any of those claims, one or two along the way, yes, but certainly not the majority of them. All right. That's that. Wait, what? Oh, here's a headline you're going to love. The Minneapolis police chief. This is the police chief in Minneapolis, Minnesota. You know what his advice is for people when there are ICE raids? Call 911. The chief of police is urging residents to call 911 on ICE agents. Yeah, Whackville doesn't get much more wackier than this. Apparently, a lot of people in Minnesota are absolutely, certifiably insane. Considering they voted for Tim Walz for governor, that is probably pretty obvious. The latest to spout this ridiculousness is the police chief, Brian O'Hara, who advised citizens Tuesday that if they see ICE agents kidnapping people, they should call 911. ICE raids have really heated up in that city ever since yesterday. Massive welfare fraud uncovered by the feds, much of it committed by the very large Somali community there. City leaders absolutely freaking out over ICE's presence. Apparently would rather let the illegals just go about their day. Bye, have a nice time. What's actually scarier than possibly dangerous illegal aliens, according to the chief, is the prospect of random people in masks kidnapping people for no apparent reason. I've seen exactly 0 reports of that happening. Listen to this crap. He says, the news conference, we've experienced reports in this city where people call to say that there's folks that are masked and they're not sure if they're law enforcement, that they may be kidnapping people. We've had those reports. He issued this bizarre plea on Tuesday when Mayor Jacob Frey accused immigration authorities of targeting Somalis based on their appearance and claimed it was inevitable that ICE would round up American citizens in the operation. Department of Homeland Security Assistant Secretary, take note, Mayor Frey. Tricia McLaughlin explicitly addressed exactly that on Wednesday, yesterday, said what makes someone a target of ICE is not their race or ethnicity. She said it is the fact they are in this country illegally. Cha-ching. The chief thinks police officers should intervene with these operations if they don't like what they're seeing, which I'm guessing probably wouldn't go very well for them. The community should know, this is the chief again, that if you see something like that, it's legitimate, that you don't know if someone is law enforcement, then you should call 911 and you should provide as much information as possible. Pledging that cops have an absolute duty to intervene in such case. Look, cops, I know you have half a brain. Please don't do that. You know that's not going to end well. Tom Homan, Borders are. had some rather harsh words from Mr. O'Hara, saying he should put his badge in the desk drawer. Can we play that cut? Yeah, we got that cut. Here we go.
But they're saying, we're not working with you. Doesn't matter what you uncover, I guess.
Look, I'll say the same thing I said to other chiefs of police in sanctuary cities. Shame on you. I mean, your number one responsibility is the safety and security of your communities. And ICE is targeting criminals. Criminals. So for you not to partner with ICE to make your community safer is shameful. He ought to put his badge in the desk drawer and walk away, because he stopped being a cop, become a politician. If a true law enforcement official would work with ICE, okay, look, I don't want to be an immigration officer. I'll leave that to you guys. But when we have an illegal alien public safety threat in the community, I want to be shoulder to shoulder with you. I want to help you make my community safer, because the chief of police, that's my number one responsibility. If he wants to watch, stand aside, do it. But if you cross that line, Pam Bondi and her U.S. attorneys are waiting to prosecute anybody that impedes law enforcement, ICE law enforcement, Border Patrol law enforcement in doing their job. Zero tolerance for impeding ICE in their.
There you go. Zero tolerance, as it should be. Remember, this is the same city where authorities were watching looters and arsonists burn the place to the ground during the 2020 George Floyd riots. Oh yeah, same place. O'Hara wasn't with the force at that time. Tim Walz was governor. He and his wife enjoying the smell of the fires. Two. I always do two. This chief took a lot of heat back in May from progressives for surprisingly criticizing the response to the riots and the rather bizarre political atmosphere in Minnesota. Maybe now he's trying to just win back favor with the lefties or the city council, which is completely left. There's clearly something in the water there, and I think maybe the chief just had a little too much to drink of the water where there's something in it. Oh my God, what a night. What an absolute nightmare. What a cluster, basically, is what it is. All right, we can't all do bad news on this show. I just can't take a show full of bad news. So, do you remember we told you just a few days ago about Irna's Law? Irna was the horrendous victim of that stabbing on the public transport from that criminal who never, ever should have been out on the streets. They enacted this law, and man, it's working. This is brilliant. A repeat offender is now being held on a $5.3 million bond. This is Irna's Law in action. Already, this law apparently taking criminals off the street, including this juvenile thug held on a bond of over $5 million. Daquan Mills, 18 years old, arrested November 13th in connection with a house shooting in Charlotte. His rather substantial bond, over $5 million, likely to keep him in jail this time. Fantastic. That's the idea. Good news for everybody who's been advocating this kind of reform in the past recent months. Repeated the horrendous race-fueled Charlotte subway murder of Irna Zarutska, Ukrainian refugee, absolutely loved her new country, the United States. In August, of course, she was riding the subway in Charlotte when this absolute scumbag of the earth, DeCarlos Brown Jr., serial criminal, rap sheet longer than your arm, going back over a decade, randomly stabbed her to death. We all recall that story only too well. And this Irna's Law in North Carolina took effect on December 1st. Well, recently, a whole bunch of offenders have received much, much higher bonds than they would have, thanks to this law. Mill's been charged with 15 counts of shooting into an occupied dwelling, felony conspiracy, possession of a stolen motor vehicle, and 2 counts of damage to property. Repeat offender. Arrested in October and once more in November. This man just doesn't want to stop. And he's only 18. Throw his ass in jail and keep him there until a trial. Then you find him guilty and you throw him in jail and you throw away the key. Bury him under the jail. Charlotte Mecklenburg police stating the obvious: repeat offenders like Mills show a persistent disregard for the law, abso-freaking-lutely, drain community resources, and continue to endanger public safety despite prior interventions. This law is doing what it was designed to do. Thank you, North Carolina. Now the other 49 states, get off your ass and start passing exactly the same legislation based on what's going on in North Carolina, because it's working. Now a judge has to consider all of an individual's criminal history, not just his official convictions, his entire criminal history, his arrests, whether he's been convicted of them or not. It'll also be more difficult for criminals to get unsecured bonds. Custody release is not happening under this new law in North Carolina. In fact, violent offenders cannot have them at all. It's in the law. Judges who grant pretrial release to criminals who provide written explanations, judges could be suspended for doing that. Whoa, burn. Law and order is returning to the streets of the absolute crime-plagued Charlotte, North Carolina. And I can think of nothing better than the way this whole thing is going down. This is fantastic. Love it. There is a story out there about the shooter in the Washington, D.C. National Guard shooting. It's not good news, folks. A bombshell report taken a jarring new turn, this story, and the emerging theory about the gunman's motives head into a much deeper national security threat. You need to listen up, because this ain't good. Rahmanullah Lankawai, something like that. Anyway, he's this scumbag 29-year-old Afghan national who's been accused, obviously it's on tape, he did it, killing Army Special Sarah Beckstrom and critically wounding Air Force Staff Sergeant Andrew Wolf. Served alongside the U.S. forces in Afghanistan before Joe Biden's completely botched withdrawal from that country, that nightmare. Now, if you've been wondering why somebody who once helped American troops would suddenly target National Guardsmen, which is what he did, you're not the only one asking that question. Federal investigators now believe, listen to this, the Taliban may have blackmailed Lankawai into carrying out this shooting attack. According to reports of the Daily Beast, U.S. intelligence is investigating information that a Taliban hit squad threatened to murder Rahmanullah Lankawai's family in Afghanistan unless he opened fire on U.S. troops in the nation's capital. Investigators are asking themselves why a man who is vetted by 2 different administrations, no criminal record, no history of any kind of extremism, suddenly drives across the country on an apparent suicide mission to shoot at heavily armed U.S. military personnel with a revolver. Sound a little bit like a Sirhan sort of operation? Now, one line of inquiry they're pursuing with this, according to sources with knowledge of the investigation, that this guy was made an offer he couldn't refuse. Either accept the mission, or your family in Afghanistan will be beaten, murdered, and possibly beheaded. He was a member of the Afghan Scorpion Forces, working very closely with the CIA and a GPS tracking specialist. He helped the U.S. military escape from Kabul in this shambles of a retreat from Afghanistan in August 21. Now, between August 14th and 20th, more than 123 people airlifted from Kabul. Afghan fighter, this guy joined one of the last flights because he served the United States and because of the danger that he would be in if he got left behind. 700 Scorpion Force members understood to be detained in Afghanistan because they worked with America and its allies. According to this report, the fallout from Biden's disastrous withdrawal is still, to this day, still unfolding. Afghans who worked with the U.S. and its allies, earlier this year, member of the Afghan Triples, an elite special forces unit created and backed by the UK to fight the Taliban, escaped to Germany, hoping to bring their family to safety. Yarmouk 60 responded by murdering his wife, his father, 4 of his children. It is by no means our only line of inquiry, said an intelligence source working with authorities to help Afghans who are marked for death in the West. People in this country have no idea about the levels of stress these people are under. Most of them have families back home. And if the Taliban can't get to them, they are making it very clear they will go after their families. Faced with this, and I'm not excusing this guy, not in any way, shape, or form, but faced with the alternative, what are you going to do? This also suggests a lot of questions need to be asked about our security vulnerabilities. He had no criminal record, no history of any kind of extremism, and he helped out the U.S. in the fight. He was vetted repeatedly before arriving in the U.S. Operation Allies Welcome. Biden administration's resettlement program, which was a complete freaking nightmare. About 76,000 Afghans were here after the Taliban takeover in Kabul. But the Taliban's blackmail theory is right. In this case, it exposes a rather nightmare scenario. Even thoroughly screened allies with no ties to terrorism can still be coerced through threats about their family members still trapped under the rule of the Taliban. This insane withdrawal from Biden didn't just return Afghanistan to the Taliban. It created a pressure point that can turn trusted partners into, as you saw, potential weapons. And there, sadly, is really no way to screen for that kind of vulnerability. Scary stuff. And they're out there. More than just this one guy. And they have families back in Afghanistan. And that's not good. Not good indeed. You know, I have to admit, when I first saw this headline, I was thinking a Native American. You know, Native American. Sioux, Cherokee, Shawnee, one of those. I didn't read the headline right. The headline says Indian American, not American Indian. Indian. So the story took on a different little color, but Indian American comedian is revealing how her community feels about President Trump. And let me tell you, the left ain't gonna be very happy about it. Zarna Garg, she is a U.S. citizen and also an Indian American comedian, or comedian, I guess they say. And she is going to likely make liberals all over the country cry out in agony when she revealed that a lot of folks in her community love President Donald Trump and his support to push enforcement law and immigration laws, especially after the failures of the previous administration. Now, if Garg is not careful, the leftists might wind up telling her she's not Indian enough. She's not fully on board with their progressive agenda. You know, if you're a minority, you're supposed to be a Democrat, remember? That's what progressives believe anyway, which is pretty damned racist. But hey, hypocrisy basically defines left-wingers. That's what they do. Garg hails from Bombay, India, came to the U.S. as a teenager, fleeing from an arranged marriage. Those are horrible things over there. She recently appeared on the Daily Beast podcast with Joanna Coles and explained why a very few individuals from India enter the country illegally. Because of that, most Indians who make the U.S. their home are furious of those who cross the border without permission and spend years going through the legal process. Now, entering through the proverbial front door instead of coming in through the back window. When it comes to immigration, Indian people, by and large, this is her, are legal immigrants in America, which means it was years of waiting, years of applying paperwork, hundreds and thousands of verifications, and submit this, submit that. So the whole legal immigration thing was something that we never really got on board. We did understand what was happening during the Biden administration, she said in the interview. And she said she and a lot of others in her community have always felt stunned by the Democrats' lack of any concern over illegal immigration. She says, we couldn't understand why they weren't taking this seriously, because ask any Indian person. We have relatives who've been waiting 15 years in line because it's the right thing to do. Yeah. And yet, it felt like anybody who was breaking the law was getting rewarded. Boy, truer words, my friends, truer words. Pointed out she's not totally on board with how the Trump admin carries out its immigration policies, but she said his actual position on the issue is absolutely correct. How about that? Indian American comedian Zarna Garg, now U.S. citizen. We love you, Zarna. Keep it up. I've never seen a show or seen anything or a YouTube video about her, but she's out there. Are you ready for a tax-free America? I don't think anybody is. Trump hinted, note the word hinted, at a bold new world of, you ready, tax freedom for Americans. He says, get rid of it. Trump, a couple of days ago, ignited a lot of excitement among taxpayers by boldly predicting they would soon bid farewell to income taxes entirely. Incredibly ambitious, the president's plan would usher in a undreamed of world of tax freedom for hardworking families. Speaking to reporters, the president teased the White House's aggressive exploration of alternative revenue streams, which already include tariffs, trade war resets, a lot of countries. The result, maybe, no income tax for you. Trump told reporters the American people at some point, not in the too distant future, will not have to pay income tax. That is a bold statement on the part of Mr. Trump. Can he do it? Well, Trump truly thinks he can. He says whether you get rid of it or just keep it around for fun or have it really low, much lower than it is now, but you won't be paying income tax. Whoa, smacked my microphone. I say we keep it around for fun. How about that? Skeptics, and there will be a ton of them, no doubt, suggested an example of President Trump overpromising, setting up voters for disappointment. An economist serving with the counselor to Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent does not appear to be in that camp. Joseph Lavorgna, he recently wrote an op-ed insisting Trump is making life affordable again for every American, citing the one big beautiful bill. From higher take-home pay for hardworking families, tax incentives that'll drive a deflationary boom, this bill engineered to make America affordable again. Historic tax reform, which will ensure that Main Street prospers alongside Wall Street in President Trump's golden age economy. Could Trump deliver a golden age for our wallets, personal bank accounts? Improving the conditions of both, an absolute must, and it's got to happen before the midterms, folks. Meanwhile, Bessent spoke at a cabinet meeting, and he predicted increased tax refunds and wage growth in the coming months. So, Trump's promise of a world without income tax is perfectly in line with a whole lot of other comments and with the establishment of the External Revenue Service, which he mentions in his inaugural address. Instead of taxing our citizens to enrich other countries, we will tariff and tax foreign countries to enrich our citizens, he says. For this purpose, we're establishing the External Revenue Service to collect all tariffs, duties, and revenues, and it'll be massive amounts of money pouring into our treasury coming from foreign sources. Winding up with, the American dream will be back and thriving like never before. If enacted, abolishing income tax would mark the most ambitious overhaul of the entire American tax system in more than 100 years. It takes a very ambitious, powerful man to make this kind of thing happen. Let's hope he's got the chutzpah to do it. If anybody can do it, this man can do it. We'll see. We shall see. Did you ever get drunk and ... fill in the blank? Pass out in some awkward position at a friend's party? I don't want to say wind up on the side of the road because you're not supposed to be driving if you're that drunk. But a lot of people do some really stupid things when they get drunk, including this one guy who actually broke into a convenience store, opened up a bunch of sealed containers, got thoroughly drunk, and then passed out in the restroom. But the problem is this wasn't some guy. Yes, it is the raccoon story. It was a raccoon. Now, my mom always used to say that if humans ever go extinct, the next intelligent species that's going to come to control the planet are raccoons. And it's pretty easy to see her point. The North American raccoon is a singular little critter, smart, adaptable, live in a wide variety of environments. They have a clever little hands. They can pick locks, open sealed containers. Now, back in the day, my parents used to contend with raccoons mostly to keep them out of my dad's big steel container he had birdseed in. But raccoons provide perfectly able little hands to be able to remove bungee cords holding the lid down, unfastening the hasps on the side, that pull up. They can do that. Eventually, you wound up having to chain and padlock the can's lid down just to prevent the raccoons from getting in. And now we see another way in which raccoons may be on the path to being just a little bit more like you and me than we hope. In Virginia, a felonious masked bandit broke into a liquor store, drank himself into a state, and passed out in the bathroom. Masked burglar broke into the closed Virginia liquor store early Saturday, hit the bottom shelf where the scotch and whiskey were stored. The bandit was something of a nocturnal menace. Bottles were smashed, the ceiling tile collapsed, and the alcohol pooled on the floor. The suspect acted like an animal because, in fact, he was a raccoon. Saturday morning, an employee at the Ashland, Virginia area liquor store opened the door to find the mess in the aisles and then found the trashed out panda passed out on the bathroom floor at the apparent end of his drunken escapade. Now, one person's trash may be a raccoon's treasure, but in this case, the trash panda in question seemed to want it to skip a few steps, species-wise, emulate classic human behavior. Getting drunk, passing out. Safe bet he didn't raccoon. With the hangover, he's going to be suffering from this mess, and we'll hope he was at least smart enough to, drink the good stuff instead of the rot gut, because it was the bottom shelf stuff. Kind of like a 15-year-old Glenn Levitt, or maybe an 18-year-old Glenn Levitt. Ooh, that'd be nice. I tasted a 21-year-old once. Heaven in a glass. Anyway, this 5-pound trash panda left an absolute trail of mess. Do we have the picture? Like a skunk. Here he is, passed out on the floor of the bathroom. And look at this. This is the mess he left. That looks like Tanqueray gin. That looks like a Glenlivet container. I can't tell what this other one is. Maybe some sort of pina colada mix. But look at that mess all the way down there. Dang. Unfreaking believable. Wow. Now, I don't want to trash talk, but if this raccoon wants to take on a more human role in the world, he might want to start with something a little more human than a drinking problem. Of course, he could have made worse decisions. He could have taken a job shoveling manure, running for political office, which is kind of the same thing. But even raccoons have some standards. Rocky Raccoon came out of the misadventure completely unscathed, mostly. After a few hours of sleep, zero signs of injury other than the rather, I'm sure, bad hangover headache he probably had, and poor life choices. He's safely released back into the wild, hopefully having learned that breaking and entering is not the answer. That according to the animal control officer. Denny says, looks like me in my 20s after karaoke night. Yeah, I've done a few of those karaoke nights myself. Oh, my goodness. All right, we're done for a Thursday. Thank you for popping by, folks. Hit that follow or subscribe button. You can also find us in VOD on YouTube. We're over there. Please subscribe to our channel, The Jay Sheldon Show on YouTube. And of course, our audio is a podcast. You can check that out on Spotify, Apple iTunes, all the podcast platforms. Just search The Jay Sheldon Show. And don't forget, your holiday gift giving, Blackout Coffee is a great place to start. The link's in our show notes. Patriot Mobile for your mobile service. Check out all of our sponsors. Go buy something. Help support the show. We'll be out of here until tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Eastern, and we'll see you then on The Jay Sheldon Show.